I'm going to take just a brief amount of time, which of course you guys know what that means, really, to explain to you once again what CRUD means, because I've been getting a lot of questions on email for people that aren't really understanding how this works, okay? So here is an example of a recent application that I've put together. This is just one table. This is how I implement CRUD on the table called departments, okay, depths here. Notice that I have a list of all of my departments. In this case, I'm listing the ID. You normally don't need to do that, okay, because the user doesn't care about an ID. What they care about is the name here. I do the ID because it's helpful for me as a developer, all right? So what I want to see is I want to see a list of something that's in a human readable format. This is the L of SCRUDL, okay, the L on the end, this is the list. So I have a list of all of my departments here. Then over on this side, I have three different things. I have view, that would be like the retrieve, the R of SCRUDL. Then I have edit, that's where I would go if I wanted to update it. I have delete, that's the D of SCRUDL. And over here, I can click on new department, that's the create. So now I've got CRUDL here, and I don't have any search capability. You know what? With 4 records, who cares? And so I'm intentionally not putting the S in of SCRUDL. See how that works? This is a classic implementation of CRUDL. Gives you the opportunity to do all the things that you want to do in order to populate the table and change it. Often, only an administrator or someone with high privileges has the right to get in and see this view, because normally you don't want somebody to see a whole table, you just want them to see the part that's for them. Does that make sense? So this is an administrator kind of view. It allows them to do all these things. Now notice when I come here, can you see down at the bottom what this says here? Okay, I am on purchasing. Depths is the name of my, if you went in there you would see depths.php, but I'm doing some fancy stuff with the HT access file to make it look nicer for a user. So it's depths, and then there's an edit function within there, and then for which one? For ID number 1. All right, so you see I'm going to a different place. If I go to this edit button, then I've still got the same thing, depths, edit, but now it's a 3 on the end.
Different pages?
No, it's the same page, but it's giving a different ID. Which record are you going to edit? The one whose ID matches up with that. So if you were doing this in your code, you would be creating something that looked like this. Does this look familiar?
Yeah. No.
Okay, the anchor. This is how you make a link in HTML. And so what I've got up here is my A link, and then the href takes me to a URL here. In this case, I'm not putting in all the stuff about localhost or GDQ.qdk.org, because everything is right there in the directory I'm already in. If you feel more comfortable, with this, does that look more normal to you?
Yeah.
Okay, same thing. But when you're all within the same directory, you don't have to worry about all those extra things. You can just refer to it directly as the script.
Like that, doesn't that kind of make sure there is no mistakes? Let's say if you change the directory later for one file but not the other, doesn't it actually help have that HTTP?
Right, but what happens if you implement it on qdk.org and then tomorrow you say, oh, this is such a great game, thousands of people are using it, I want to give it its own domain. And now suddenly you have to go through every single script that you've got, finding every reference to qdk.org and changing all of them. So if you were going to do this and list them all off, you should probably put your domain name there. You should probably put it in a variable that's a global variable accessed in some configuration file somewhere in order to do this. Anyway, that's not the point that I'm trying to make. You guys know how to make a link. You know how to make a link to a PHP script. Yes? Everybody nod your head if you know how to make a link to a PHP script.
That's it right there, right?
That's it right there. If you can put what I put up there, then you know how to do that. And you've all put this kind of a thing, the part that's between the quotes, you've all put that into your address bar in your browser, right? And then you've all accessed things like $_request brackets. Oh, come on. Got my fingers on the wrong home row keys.
It what? It happens.
Request ID. Okay, what is that going to give me based on this? If I was at this address right up here, what would that give me?
Your ID?
Which is?
3.
3. It would give me a 3. If I wanted to know what the action is that's being requested, what would $_request brackets action give me?
URL?
No, the action.
The page.
Look at my URL up there.
Edit.
It would give me the word edit. Okay? So if I did something like this,
This looks like PMWiki.
really? Almost like PMWiki is written in PHP? It is. Guys, what you're doing something simple, expand it a little bit, you get to PMWiki, expand it beyond that, you get to Facebook, expand it beyond that, you know, you're doing the stuff that the web is built on. There's nothing, no magic wall that we all of a sudden make a door through and walk through. You're in there. You've just got to take these simple things and put them together in increasingly complex and deep and more information intensive ways. Okay?
Been there, done that.
Okay? So you see this. Now I say if my action is equal to edit, then give me an HTML form. Echo all my HTML forms. Have you done that before? Have you echoed things into a form? So you would have things like echo form name equals foo, and then input. Okay. Great, no problem. But you get the idea. Within that if statement, I now output my entire form in there, right? And the last thing is echo input type equals submit name equals save edit, whatever you're going to call it, okay? And then you end off and you do your end form.
Value in there as well, so it's not like blank button. Value equals submit. So they know what they're doing.
Okay, and then I come down here and I say else if $request save edit, then $SQL equals update my table set foo equal $my value, whatever I set up in the thing above. Okay, do you see what I'm doing?
Yeah. You're just updating your tables to whatever that value is.
Right? Okay. And then I come down here and I say else if $request action equals delete. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I have that here. Sort of.
You have a single quote and single quote.
I know. I'm not doing this for good. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. Oops, forget the query. You see what I'm doing here? Was it fetch? And then we've got our actions over here, and I've got to put my ahref equals whatever it is, foo.php, action equals edit. I didn't do this right. ID equals $row ID. Okay, you see what I just did?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm listing some kind of information about my table here. That's my list, right? And then I put in a link over here. What is my link to? Some kind of a script. And then I specify, that should be a question mark on an ampersand. Okay, action equals whatever my action is, ID equals whatever my ID is, and then give it a text that'll go out there, and that's going to end up looking like one of these buttons here. Except it's not. You have to make it pretty with CSS, otherwise it'll just be edit underlined. Okay? Are you seeing how this works? So now what I've got is I've got a script in its entirety that from the top it goes down and it says, do you want me to edit? Okay, then give me a form, and then I should have an exit under that because I don't want the list to come up at the bottom, right? If I don't have this exit, then it finishes putting the form and then it comes down and puts up my list. And I don't really want that. If I'm just editing one item, I don't want a list of all my items, right? Tim?
What's the difference between exiting and dying?
Same. Different names for the same thing.
Okay.
Okay? So I exit out, which means I don't come down and do anything further down here. Then, if someone clicks on the submit, save, edit, it comes back into the same script. You can do this in different scripts. I'm just showing you how I do it in a single script because it keeps all the logic for one table together, which makes it easy for me to get to this without having to do a lot of redirects and complicated stuff like that. All right? So they press submit on this save edit. So I say, hey, is the request save edit? Is there some value in that? Oh, there is? Then they must have just pressed submit. Well, what do I want to do? Then I want to save this value here. No problem. I save the value, and then I come down, and what happens automatically? I create my list. So they edited one item, they pressed save, my SQL saved it, and now I'm down looking at my list again. Now, what if they press delete? Well, then I come in here. Is action edit? No. Is it save edit? No. Is it delete? Well, yes, as a matter of fact it is. All you've got to do is say delete from my table where ID equals, and then we've supplied the ID in this thing up here, right? And you understand that action and ID, these are just the names I've come up with. I'm using names that make sense to me, that'll be easy for me to realize what they're for. But if you want to call it something besides action, if you want to call it step or phase or stage or whatever you want to call it, that's fine. I just want you to see action, there's nothing magic about that. It's just like the name of a variable. All right? So then I do my SQL, I do my query, and now I go on down and do my list again. This time, it won't show the record that I just had here before because I've just deleted it out of my table. Does that make sense? This is kind of a classic implementation of SCRUDL without the search. If you wanted to put the search in there, you would have a little search bar, and you would have action equals search, and then in this list down here, part of your where, you would say where name is in such and such, or something like that. You would use those wildcards or something like that. Okay? Is it making sense? I'm feeling like I'm getting a little bit of glossed over.
It's similar to what I already have.
Okay, similar
I
to
think
what
it's
you already
actually
have.
better than what I have, but
Wildcards is where you can select. You use the like command in SQL. So if I'm doing search, and you don't have to do search. That's not part of this project if you don't. But you can say something like this. Okay? If you say select star from my table where name like OWE, that would pick up Bowers. Okay? Because I've used these wildcards, a % before and a % after. It's kind of like stars in like on the command line. Okay? Like star.php picks up all the PHP files, well in SQL it's % sign. Okay? Are we good? Do you feel a little more clear on what SCRUDL, how that works? Okay. If you have questions, please ask me. Would it be helpful if we did some kind of a session between now and when I go on today, Thursday, and Tuesday? Tuesday next is my last time with you guys. Would it be helpful if we tried to get some evening where we could get together and do question and answer, and I would be available to help? Would that be of help or not?
Is next Tuesday finals week, or is that the week after?
It's the week after.
Oh,
Tell you what, let me put it this way. If you're interested in getting help, probably the way I would organize it would be to have you come to my house. And if you want to do that some evening, I am available. Okay? You call me up, you say, hey, I could come over on Wednesday or on Thursday, do either of those work? And I'll say, yeah, Wednesday my wife's out anyway, why don't you come on over at 6:30, make sure you've already eaten because, you know, we eat at 6 o'clock or whatever, and then you can sit there and work on your computer, I'll sit there and work on my computer. You have a problem, you can ask me the question and I can give you real-time answers. Okay? How many of you are feeling a little bit of desperation about the project right now?
Just the Ajax part.
Okay, Ajax is not required.
Oh, good.
Okay, Ajax would be like additional functionality.
I could probably incorporate it in one of the pages. I don't know if I can do
Depending on
everything.
what you're doing, Ajax might not even make sense in what you're doing.
Right. Ajax is not a required component. That's one tool. And if you've got a hammer in your hand and a nail in your hand, then use the tool. But if you've got a hammer in your hand and a glass vase, please avoid using the hammer. It's not recommended. Okay? So you got to use your tools according to what your application is.
Could I have the password for staff
Yeah.
to download?
Any other thoughts on this? I don't want to belabor this. I'll go ahead and stop this. Joshua, nice talking to you. Everybody want to say hi to Joshua?
Hi, Joshua.
All right. Bye, Joshua.